Hello and welcome to the MBOM podcast, where you will learn to master the business of yoga with guests from around the world who have experienced becoming successful yoga teachers, studio owners, and much more. Now, here's your host, Amanda Kingsmith.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the MBOM podcast. I'm Amanda and I'll be your host for this and all episodes of the show. This episode of the podcast is brought to you by FavYogis. Do you teach privately? Make payment and registration a breeze. Use the FavYogis app to create and manage classes for your personal clients. Life is just easier with autopay. You can forget about remembering to Venmo, or if you're up in Canada, sending an invoice, an e-transfer, or a PayPal, depending on where your clients are in the world. With FavYogis, you can use autopay to enable repeating payments. This will save you so much time and make things so much easier. You can also keep your calendars in sync. Google Calendar integration automatically updates teacher and student classes when you make changes. It's still just your yoga. Teachers add classes, students add teachers and students stay connected. Head on over to the App Store and find FavYogis, FavYogis. Use code MBOM and let them know that I sent you. This episode of the podcast is also brought to you in part by Offering Tree. When you're a yoga teacher and you're trying to build your digital presence, it can be daunting. First, you might need a website. There are a lot of great tools for building websites like WordPress, Wix, and Squarespace. Then you need a way to email your students. Again, there are tools for that like MailChimp and Constant Contact. But that's another account to pay for and another password to remember. Then you need a way to schedule and register your students. Again, there are tools for that, but it's another account to create and pay for and another password to remember. Oh wait, how do I integrate my scheduling tool with my website? Arrgh! Instead of putting all of this stuff off for another day because it's too daunting, let me tell you about a better way. Offering Tree set out to make creating your digital presence fun, easy, and affordable. With one account, you can create a website in minutes that has your schedule built right in. They also have email marketing tools to collect email addresses, send newsletters, and automated emails to your subscribers. It all works seamlessly together with one account and one subscription. To learn more about what Offering Tree can do for your digital presence, visit offeringtree.com/MBOM. Offering Tree has been supporting MBOM for close to a year now, and not only are they really changing the game for yoga teachers, making yoga business easy, they're also just really awesome people. They're a small business just like me, probably just like you, and I love that when I get to meet with them, I'm talking right with the co-founders. They're in it every single day, busting their butts to make a product that's really great, and I feel that when I use it. Offering Tree is providing special pricing for MBOM listeners, so be sure to visit offeringtree.com/MBOM to receive your discount. I am also super excited to announce a brand new partnership with Mind Body Online. You know the saying, people won't remember what you said, but they'll remember how you made them feel? That's true, both in our personal lives and in our business lives. MindBody is a company that knows every customer interaction is a chance for your business to shine and for you to help your customers thrive. With that simple truth in mind, MindBody has spent nearly 20 years sweating the details of what it looks like to design and run an extraordinary fitness or wellness business. From offering simple and seamless booking to being able to greet a new customer by name to the email that lands in their inbox with a great offer, they obsess over finding ways to allow you to craft a thoughtful, meaningful experience for your customers. Because they know it's the experience that makes a difference for you and your customers. Find out more about MindBody at mindbodyonline.com/pod. That's POD. Once again, it's mindbodyonline.com/pod. All right, now on to today's episode of the podcast. And today we're doing something a little bit different on the show. I am joined by Uma Girish, and she is a guide for spiritually minded women who are grieving from loss. So that could be the death of a loved one, the end of a relationship, an illness, an empty nest, the loss of a dream, or just that feeling that I think a lot of us can resonate with of searching for something that's a little bit deeper. And when Uma and I first started talking about what this episode would look like, I really honestly wasn't sure if it was a good fit for the podcast because I really want to focus on the business side of yoga. And I think that, for me and probably for a lot of people listening, that feels like very tangible things like talks on marketing and sales and how to set up your business and what you need to do legally and, the little nitty-gritty tips and tricks for what it actually means to be an entrepreneur. But as I looked through Uma's stuff and started thinking about what this episode could look like, I was reminded of this idea that we are never fully disconnected from all parts of us. And when I say that, I mean that we are not just our yoga teacher selves. We're not just our yoga business selves. We're not just our personal selves. All of that kind of weaves into one. And for a lot of us, it's really hard to separate these things and compartmentalize them. And Uma and I talk about this a lot, that, as humans, we are not different compartments. We don't just turn things off and then turn things on. And I think that in today's society, that is kind of what's required from us when we're going through some really big stuff personally. And one of the things that I really wanted to focus on within this call and why I thought it was really important for yoga teachers specifically is that for most of us, we don't hold full-time jobs with any type of benefits. So when I worked corporate, and, I'm Canadian, so this is maybe different in different countries and for different listeners, there was the possibility of me taking sabbaticals or leaves of absence that were paid. And for me now, if I don't work, I don't get paid. And I think that that's the same for a lot of you who are listening. And when we're struggling with big stuff, it's really hard to just put our business and our lives on hold to deal with it. And so that's really what I wanted to get out of this conversation. So Uma and I talk about how to deal with all different types of grief and loss. We talk a little bit about how to make our classes more supportive to people who are dealing with grief and loss, how to make them feel welcome. And we also talk about her business, how she has moved through the process of being okay asking for money in exchange for her services, because she runs a very, very spiritually minded business. And that was a big thing for her. So I hope that you guys enjoy this episode, even though it is a little different from what we often do here on the podcast. And without further ado, here is Uma. Uma, welcome to the podcast today. I'm super excited to have you here with me.
Oh, thank you for having me, Amanda. I'm excited to have this conversation and let's see how it goes. I'm excited to share my message, what lights me up, and my hope and intention for our time together is that every single listener who comes to this conversation across all time and space will take away at least a little nugget of wisdom that improves their life.
Amazing. I love that. And so let's start by, can you just tell, myself and listeners a little bit about yourself and the business that you run?
Sure. I call myself a grief guide, and I support spiritually minded women who are grieving different kinds of losses. So whether they're grieving the death of someone they love, or the end of a relationship, a childhood they never had, the loss of a job, an illness, a diagnosis, an empty nest, these women know that there is a deeper thing that is calling to them from beneath their loss. But they don't know what it is, they don't know how to find it. So I help these women find this deeper thing that they came here to do through the portal of pain, so they can transform their pain into purpose.
Wow, that's amazing. And how did you get into that? Like, what's kind of your backstory on doing this work?
Thank you for asking, because that's really the starting point of my journey. This was back in 2008 when my husband, my 15-year-old daughter, and I moved from India to the United States. 10 days after we moved into our apartment in Chicago, my mother, who lived in India with my sister and my dad, was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. And she died 8 months after her initial diagnosis. She was only 68 years old. I totally did not see this coming, because when we moved here, we came here with lots of dreams and this intention to live a new adventure in a new country. But life had opened up a completely different path for me. My mother's death devastated me. It just dropped me into this abyss of pain. And what's most interesting is that I was in a country and a culture where I had no friends. I was just learning to drive. It was my first winter in Chicago when the skies are bleary and you don't see people out on the streets. There's just a bleak landscape everywhere. And I was in my own bleak landscape of loss. So as I started moving through this pain and learning how to manage my emotions and what to do with this, one image kept coming back to me over and over again. And that was my mother's body lying on the floor of her living room, because if you know anything about the Hindu faith, the body is always brought home. The purification rites are performed at home before it travels out to the crematorium. So my sisters and I, we performed my mother's last rites. And when I stepped back, I had this moment, I had this thought, which was a pretty profound thought. She was wrapped in this beautiful silk sari, and she was taking her last journey to the crematorium in that sari. I thought to myself, we come into this world with nothing. We leave with nothing. All she gets to take on this last journey is that one piece of garment she's covered in. Why do we spend our entire lives accumulating, chasing after possessions, grabbing for more and more and more? And that was the first question that moved me down a path where I really got curious about the big life questions, like who am I? Why did I come here? What is the meaning of my life? What is the purpose I'm meant to serve in this world? And that was really the starting point of my transformational journey, which I speak about in my Hay House memoir, Losing Amma, Finding Home, a memoir about love, loss, and life's detours.
Wow, that's an amazing, incredible story. And of course, I'm sorry to hear about your mom, but it sounds like one of those types of things that really set you down the path that you're supposed to be on. And it's kind of interesting, and maybe you can touch more on this, but it seems like sometimes these big life events that hit us really hard actually help us get in the direction that we actually need to go.
You're so right. I get this today. I didn't back then. Every crisis is a crossroad. All of us come to a point in our lives when there's a fork in the road, and we have to decide, which way am I going to go? Am I going to let this crisis or this loss shut me down and live life like I've always done? Or am I going to allow this loss to open me up, to open my heart up to the wisdom I'm meant to receive through this life-changing event? And when we do that, when we allow this crisis to open us up, we have the ability to transform our lives and to make meaning from the pain that we've experienced in a way that serves other people. That is really the meaning of pain. Pain isn't just some random thing that's given to us by a punishing universe. We have it so wrong when we think, my life is unfair, my life sucks, I don't like what's happening to me. Why am I always receiving a raw deal? It's like life is picking me out from a line, to give me one thing after another, and I'm struggling and it seems never ending. But every crisis is meant as a wake-up call. And if we can really get the lessons as to why it's happening, what we are meant to learn from it, how we are meant to grow through it, our lives can really be richer for that experience.
Absolutely. I love that. And so you had this profound experience in your life, and then that set you down the path of becoming a grief guide. But what was the journey like? So you're like, okay, I want to learn more about this. I want to help other people. Can you walk me through the process of actually, like, I guess, essentially starting a business doing this?
Sure. So my mind wasn't going, I need to now turn this into a business, because I was still dealing with a lot of pain. I didn't know what my life was going to look like. Remember, I was brand new here. I didn't even have a job at the time. I think I applied for a bunch of jobs. Nothing came through because we were going through the grand recession of 2008. The only part-time job that opened up for me was at a retirement community. So I decided that I needed to find some people who could help me through this pain. So I enrolled in a grief support program at a local church. Now, this was the most terrifying thing to me. I was born and raised Hindu, don't know anything about going into a church. And this was a really large space. And I walked in there feeling terrified, broken, lost, and hopeless. But sitting at that table for 9 weeks, this was a loss of parent group. Sitting at that table for 9 weeks and just hearing other people's stories and having the space to share my own story was such a healing experience. I was allowed to be myself. I could cry my tears. I could share my stories about my mother. Remember, nobody in this country even knew my mother, so nobody had a context for who she was. I wasn't able to share stories about her because I didn't even really have friends to talk to at the time. So just going to this grief support group week after week was a way in which I could verbalize my grief, my pain. And then I began to realize very early on that I didn't just want to learn how to manage my emotions or manage my grief. I wanted to grow through my grief. I wanted to understand, what is this thing called death? Why do we come here? What happens when we die? Is there an afterlife? How are we meant to find our purpose? Why is there so much suffering in the world? And so I decided to sign up with a spiritual mentor. I worked with this person for 2.5 years. And alongside, this was not even a choice. I just felt like my soul was screaming at me to serve. I felt this pulling from the middle of my chest, literally, that I had to go and find something, some cause, something to serve. And so I would walk into retirement communities and nursing homes and just spend my time with seniors who were in pain, physical pain, emotional pain, psychic pain, and just being there with them, hearing their stories, being the safe container for them was such a healing experience for me. I also trained to become a hospice volunteer. And I go into a story about how all of that happened in my book, but I didn't even know the meaning of the word hospice. I thought it had something to do with hospitals, because in India we don't have hospice. But I would hear the word come up because I was in a retirement community or a nursing home where people talked about hospice care all the time. And I was at this play. A friend of mine asked me if I wanted to go see this play, and I had an open evening. I said, sure, I'll come with you. And the play was about a mother-daughter relationship where the mother is diagnosed with cancer and she passes away. It was about hospice care. And there was an organization, a hospice organization right there at the venue, making a presentation about what they do, putting out a call for volunteers. And I recognized that this was my big sign. So I signed up to become a volunteer. And for the next 5 years, I worked as a bedside companion to the dying. I worked with bereaved family members. I supported the bereavement counselors. I trained to become an expert in the area of grief healing. I became a life purpose coach. I got all my work in place as I was healing. And I knew then, without a shadow of a doubt, I felt it in my bones that this was my calling. I had been able to transform my pain into purpose, and I really wanted to help other women do the same.
Wow, that's amazing. What an incredible journey you've been on. It's amazing to hear. So thank you for sharing that. And we can definitely put a link in the show notes for your book and all that good stuff as well, and talk about that a little closer to the end. But diving into, just dealing with grief, one of the reasons that I was, interested in chatting with you is because, it doesn't matter if you're trained in yoga or a yoga teacher, or if you work, for a big corporate company, like we still have to learn how to deal with tough emotions, both in our personal life and in business. And I remember when I first started working in corporate years ago, people would be like, will you leave your personal life at the door? And it always just felt like a little weird to me. Like I was like, I don't feel like I'm like an on-off switch. Like it's not like I turn off the light for one room and I close the door and then I walk into the next space and turn on the light. Like it's not like I can just like leave pain and suffering in one space and be somebody different in another space. So it was always very confusing for me. So I guess my question for you is, how do we make space for tough emotions in both our personal life and our businesses?
I love that you bring this up, Amanda. Sadly, that's the case even today. In the corporate environment, women are, I say women because I work with women, but this is equally true of men. We are expected to, park our pain and suffering, along with the coat on the coat hook and then walk inside and be a different person. This is a complaint I hear from women I support all the time. Like, how do I walk into this space? How am I expected to be this professional person when I'm carrying the burden of all these emotions? And that is such a great question, because it is true. We are not compartmentalized. We can't compartmentalize the heart and the mind and say, okay, heart, switch off now. I need to go to work. Mind, switch on. And just let's get the work done. And then we'll go home and make time for grief. Mm-hmm. That's not how it happens. It's just very sad to me that the culture expects that of us. We are expected to go into these office spaces and perform like nothing is going on in our personal lives. But we can't compartmentalize like that. And so, it's unfortunate. I know there are places where corporate policies are being changed to be a little more accommodating of grief. We know that that's true of Facebook because of what Sheryl Sandberg went through herself. Being the CEO of Facebook, when she lost her husband, she began to realize that we need to make space for these emotions. We need to allow employees to be able to be with their feelings and not expect to perform like robots no matter what's going on in their lives. And so I know there are other companies that are also getting on board with changing corporate policies and becoming more open to conversations around loss. But for the most part, I don't think that's happening. In India, the corporate world is very accommodating of grief and loss. There's I think, a 13-day mourning period. The official mourning period is 13 days. And when someone suffers an intimate loss, they're not even expected to go back to work for that length of time until all the rituals and ceremonies get done. Unfortunately, in the Western world, we don't have a container for that experience, and that's why people suffer. So you have to find some way to give yourself permission to grieve. One of the suggestions I share with grieving women who have to be in the corporate world is, find an empty conference room. If you're feeling these emotions come up, or go sit in your car, take a 15-minute break, go sit in your car, allow yourself to cry, or speak out loud what you're feeling as a way to let the words out, let the emotions an escape route, and then go back to what you were doing. Because if you try to compartmentalize and say, I'm not going to think about this, I'm just going to focus, that's not going to happen. If you've grieved a loss, you know that the first thing that strikes you is this brain fog. Most people who are grieving know that they can't remember appointments, they misplace their keys and glasses, they feel like they're 75 years old, even though they're 36, Grief just messes with the wiring in the brain. That's the simplest way I can say it. Your brain deletes information that you need because grief takes up so much room. Mm-hmm. And so one of the suggestions is take a time out when you feel emotions rising up inside of you. The second piece of advice that I have to give is create a grief altar in your home, a space where you can allow yourself to grieve. And maybe it's after the kids go to sleep, but give yourself like 10 minutes, 15 minutes to really sit in that space. And it helps to create an altar because that almost becomes like your safe haven. You can put photographs of your deceased loved one, their favorite books. You can place flowers, candles, incense, crystals, whatever you feel like. Make it your own. And spend some time sitting in this nook and letting yourself cry, or writing a letter to your loved one, reading something out loud to them, speaking your feelings out loud. Because when you take the time to witness your grief, then your grief is not waiting to trip you up, which is what happens when we don't take the time to witness our grief. If we walk around pretending that we can compartmentalize, that we can lock it away in a closet and just go on with life and be a functioning human being, that's when grief is going to trip you up. Mm-hmm. So there are no easy answers to this because women do have to go to work. they have kids, and they have lives in their office spaces. So it's not an option. If it's not an option for you to take time off and indulge in some self-care and then go back to work, these are some ideas that I have to offer.
Yeah, those are all really great. And when it comes to creating an altar, do you suggest that your grief altar is different than maybe another altar that you have? Like just since there's a lot of yogis, yoga teachers listening, I think probably a lot of people have sort of a sacred space. But is it important to have that sacred space for grief be different than, say another altar that you already tend to?
I would think so, yes. I would encourage people to build a separate grief altar only because you build it because of where you are with regard to your journey. And so you want to put it together depending on what's important to you. Your regular sacred space exists for a reason. And so you can just have this grief altar be a shelf. It could be a shelf in your bedroom. It could be a little corner in your basement. If that's all the space you have, that's all you need. But when you come there, it's like you inhabit that space with a different energy. You have permission to be you. You have permission to feel your feelings. You have permission to speak out your feelings. You have permission to verbalize and explore and cry and vent and rage. And so I suggest that it be a separate space from your regular sacred space.
Right. That definitely makes sense. And then, as yoga teachers, how can we hold space for people who might be coming to our classes with grief? So there's the side of like, how do we deal with our own grief and continue on? But then also as yoga teachers, like, how do we hold space for people who are grieving?
I think you need to address each person as a unique individual, and maybe a person shows up for yoga class and they're not even ready to get into pose. Maybe they just need a listening ear. Maybe they need to tell a story that's burdening them in the moment. And so instead of getting them to, roll out their mat and get into a pose, maybe as a yoga teacher, you can just take them to a private space. If there's a little room where you can sit with them and just let them cry if they need to, or share a story, or rage about something, about how a friend is not being understanding or how their friends are moving away from them because they're grieving. I think that would be far more valuable than trying to get them to get on the mat and get on with the exercises. They need to be okay with where they are at in terms of their physical availability and emotional availability. Sometimes, not sometimes, all the time, grief is so exhausting that it's not uncommon for people not to have the energy to do a yoga session, but they think, I should be doing yoga and it'll be a good thing for me to move my body. And in some cases, that's right. And some days it's right. Some days it may not be right. What they probably need is a hug, is a listening ear, is some kindness and words of compassion. Maybe you can teach them a little loving kindness mantra, which will be more valuable to them in the moment than a yoga pose. But if they're feeling the need to, work out the kinks in their body, maybe there are some specific grief yoga poses that you can teach them to help them open their hearts wider. And I know that there are teachers who do this grief yoga thing specifically for grieving people. So maybe that's what they need in the moment. Maybe all they need is a hug and a listening ear. It really depends on each individual and where they are on their journey on that particular day.
Mm-hmm. Right. And if they're showing up for like a public class where there's a lot of other people, then just kind of, supporting them the best that you can, I guess would be the best way to do that. Like, I think that as a yoga teacher, like holding space is like, if somebody needs to just like sit in child's pose and cry, then that's totally fine, right? You're not like forcing them to get into a pose because that just might be what they need in that moment.
That's exactly right. Because, they know where they are with regard to their physical exhaustion, mental exhaustion, emotional heaviness. And so maybe you want to, before the class begins, pull them to the side if you know they're grieving a loss and say, just give yourself permission to do what feels right, what you're able to do. I'm not going to watch you. I'm not going to expect you to keep pace with the rest of the class. Just feel free to do what you want to do. And if all you want to do is stay in child's pose, and that feels good to you, go ahead and do that. So just giving them the permission and the validation to be themselves.
Yeah, that's an important one for sure. And so one of the things that I think, especially as an entrepreneur, that can be a little bit challenging is, knowing when to pull back from your business. And obviously there's lots of different reasons that you might pull back from your business. And I think that grief is definitely one of them. But how do you actually, if you need to heal emotionally from, a broken heart or a loss that's close to you, that's really hurting, how do you actually pull back from your business without maybe letting everything go completely?
Such a good question. So here's what I would say to that. Your business is your passion project, right? You are birthing this business, you're bringing it out into the world because you feel like you want to make a difference in people's lives, you want to serve people in some unique way. So know that passion and desire come from your heart, but then when you're grieving a loss, sadness, fear, anger, guilt, grief, all of these emotions also live in your heart. And you need to make space for all of them. You can't give your attention, energy, and focus to your business when grief is demanding energy from you. So the first thing is to be okay with where you are and not judge. Judgment is what really trips us up on the loss and grief journey, because so many women have judgments around, I should show up at my desk and I should put in an 8-hour day or a 10-hour day, just like before. I need to lock up this part of my life and just serve my clients, because that's what I came here to do. That's what the business is about. If I don't do it, it's going to reflect in my bank account, and I'm not going to make as much money as I projected. We need to let all that stuff go. When loss strikes, we are just meant to be with our emotions and our feelings. If we don't take care of ourselves, we are really not going to be available for our business. You can kid yourself, or you can delude yourself into thinking you can show up for your business and serve your clients like nothing's happening. But when you start doing that, you'll very quickly realize that you really don't have the energy and the intentionality with which you come to your business, with which you want to come to your business. So I would say let go of the judgments. That's number one. The second thing is do an energy check every morning. Ask yourself, where am I today with my energy? Did I sleep well last night? What do I need today? Do I need to drink enough water? Do I need to go get a yoga class myself maybe? Do I need to move? Do I need to maybe stay in bed and take another nap? Look at your calendar and see if you're overscheduled. As a caution, try not to overschedule. Don't take on too many clients if you are in this period of mourning. And if you find yourself overscheduled, it's okay to pick up the phone and make a different decision. It's okay to say, I'm just not able to bring all of myself to you today, which I so want to do because you're paying me for this and I take my work seriously. Mm-hmm. So I'm asking for permission to reschedule. You need to learn how to say no really well when you're grieving, because you can't do everything that you commit to. You don't have the room, the space, or the energy. Now, on Wednesday, you may schedule something for Friday. You wake up on Friday morning and you're a hot mess. You feel like you can't show up for a client session. You just need to be okay with that. Let go of the judgment. Be willing to say no. Call the client or email them and ask for permission to reschedule. It may not be a bad idea for you when you're grieving to just let your clients know that this is the season you're in and that you're going to make every effort to serve them well, but there are going to be days when you may cancel, you may reschedule, and just ask for permission for you to be flexible. Because you can't really compartmentalize. I keep going back to this, but that's just what life is. We can't lock our emotions away and pretend that we are doing okay. Mm-hmm. So trust is such a big part of this journey. You have to be able to, you have to be willing to trust the universe or God or Buddha or whoever you speak to and just know that you are being supported in terms of what you need in this season of life. If you can't serve clients, just trust that the universe will bring you that income in some other way. It's the fears and the panic and the anxiety that we feel at not being available for our clients and our work that stops the universe from being able to bring us what it wants to. So let the fear, the panic, and the anxiety go and just trust. Just tell the universe, offer it to the divine and say, this is where I find myself. I don't have the energy. I need the energy. I need the income. I need to make rent. I need to pay mortgage. I need to pay my kids, after school activities. And I just don't know where the money is coming from, but I'm just putting this on you. I know that something will happen that will miraculously bring the money I need to help me live, because I don't have the energy or the ability to show up for my business the way I would like to. So just giving yourself permission to be okay with where you are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's definitely an important one for sure. And I think I definitely understand the stress of not wanting to let everything go that you've worked really hard for and wanting to push through with it. And then also I think when you have a big loss in your life, it's you kind of feel like everything is going down the toilet a little bit. And I think sometimes people cling to what they do have that's going well. So it's if you've got this really great business that's going on, then you want to keep that going, as opposed to maybe giving yourself that permission like you were talking about. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense, because really if you want the business to be going, you're attached to the fact that the business should keep going, even though I'm in this season of loss and I'm just not feeling ready to commit to this energy or this level of work. That's really your ego mind telling you something terrible is going to happen if you walk away from your business for a week or two.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the thing, the clients who don't understand you, the clients who complain that you're not being available, that you're rescheduling, that you're dropping the ball on them, they will leave anyway. Loss is about transformation on all levels. So your business may change, your client profile may change, everything shatters and regroups again. But the clients who will stick with you through this season are the clients you want to work with. And you know what you're doing in the process of giving yourself permission? You're modeling it for your clients. You're teaching them what to do when they have a crisis in their lives by showing them how to respond to it. You're being a wonderful demonstration, and the people that value real, authentic coaches will stick with you because you're showing up for them in a way that is real. This stuff is real. This is part of the human journey. You're letting them know you may have days like this, my friend, when you probably have a business or you probably have a job and you will not be able to show up for it. But I'm being real in telling you, in showing you that this is how it works. So be there, take time for self-care and self-compassion. Be your best friend through this journey, even if it means saying no to a few deadlines and commitments.
Right. Yeah, definitely. That is, super, super important, especially for us go-getter entrepreneurs who just kind of want to push everything through, just push through everything, I guess you could say.
Yeah. And when you push through everything, it doesn't work. It doesn't open the flow. You're not opening to the flow when you're pushing, striving, hustling. So we must be aware that everything is energy. As a yoga teacher, you know this. Everything is energy. So the energy of pushing, striving, and hustling is not going to lead to more flow. The energy of acceptance and compassion and self-kindness and self-love is going to open to more flow. So when we get that equation right, the universe is going to support us with what we need.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, that's definitely powerful stuff. And so one of the things that I think is kind of interesting about, just society as it is now and the whole social media craze and especially in the yoga space is this trend towards positive thinking and positivity. And I think that, this is in general probably a good thing to be positive. But, something when it comes to loss and heartache is sometimes things just suck and you don't want to pretend to be positive or have positive thinking. So I'm curious, how do we navigate the balance of positivity with just being exactly as we are in that moment.
I call this the epidemic of positive thinking. I think spiritual bypassing has become such a fashionable trend in today's world that we go very quickly to the next fix, to the next feel-good feeling, to the next mantra or affirmation, and that is simply not useful at all. You see this in people when, like you tell them, you say something to them like, hey, I heard that you lost your job 2 weeks ago. And they're like, yeah, that was awful. It sucked. But you know what? This job gave me so much and I've earned so much money from it. It was so good while it went well. And I just have to be grateful for everything that it brought to me. And that's the place you recognize that you're jumping to positive thinking. When you say, yeah, but, it's very hard for people to stay in the space of, yeah, it sucks that I lost this job. I don't like that it happened. I don't like the way it happened. I'm scared. And I don't know if I can find anything as good as this. That's the space we need to live in before we get to I'm grateful for XYZ. And for so many people, there's real discomfort inhabiting that space. So they jump very quickly to the next positive thought or feeling. So I would say self-awareness is your best friend when you're, trying to be too positive too quickly. Catch yourself and say, am I going to gratitude very quickly, jumping from what's uncomfortable to a feeling good place? And then stop yourself and allow yourself to be uncomfortable where you are. It's only by practicing the muscle of discomfort that we get better at tolerating it. So jumping away from discomfort doesn't ever get us to practice discomfort. It's like when you go to the gym and you're learning how to lift 5-pound weights and you say, oh gosh, this is too hard. I'm going to go back to 3-pound weights. You're never going to lift 5-pound weights. It's the same with this way of thinking. If you're constantly uncomfortable with discomfort and you move away to gratitude or the next affirmation or the next thing you need to be doing or the workshop at the end of the week, that should be a little alert, a warning signal, a red flag to you that you are jumping away from the space of discomfort. So bring yourself back and just stay there. Stay there and see what it feels like. Mm-hmm. Don't get to positive thinking too quickly, because discomfort teaches us a whole lot more than positive thinking. Discomfort lets us feel that squirmy sensation in the body. It's like, I want to flee my body. I don't like how pain feels. I don't like how anger feels. I'm not supposed to feel angry because I'm all spiritual, right? Like, I'm a yoga teacher. This stuff is not supposed to happen to me. So first, recognize self-awareness is your best friend. The second thing is make room for everything. Make room for envy, for anger, for, a woman said to me, she lost her husband, and she said, every time I see couples walking down the road holding hands, I feel so jealous. And I can't say this to anyone but you. I said, you don't have to say this to anyone, but you just have to be okay with feeling jealousy. You're not wrong. There's nothing wrong with what you're feeling. But if you're making it wrong and causing yourself shame, that I shouldn't be feeling jealous, I should be happy for them, this is a sign of love. It's all good. It's good when we speak these things out loud, but what we are doing is we are judging what we are feeling in the moment. Somehow we are pushing away at jealousy and calling it a bad feeling, a feeling that should not be felt. Mm-hmm. And when you do that, you disown a part of you. So the best thing to do is just say, yes, I'm feeling jealousy in this moment. And I accept that I'm feeling jealous in this moment. I'm feeling anger right now. Maybe it's not the best emotion. If I had a choice, I wouldn't pick anger, but I can't deny the fact that my heart is racing, my face is flushed, my palms are sweaty. I'm definitely feeling angry. Something is pushing my boundary here. Mm-hmm. Or someone said something to trigger me, and I need to sit with that and say, what was it that triggered me? And what does this remind me of? Was it something my father used to say when I was 5 years old? So take responsibility, own your feelings, be okay with everything. The challenge of being spiritual is to be fully human. If you deny your humanness and just want to live on that mountaintop like a monk, feeling all the feelings that we should, like gratitude and joy and compassion and love, that's like escaping the human journey, because the human journey is messy and ugly and real. It's not going to feel good every day. There are days when you will just cry. There are days when you will get angry. There are days when you won't treat people the way you want to treat them. You want to be kind. You want to be loving. But there are days when people will push your buttons and you will not respond with kindness. You will respond with a retort. So we need to find a way to make it all okay and embrace every feeling that comes up. It's a part of you. Your feelings, your feelings that you're disowning are just parts of you that want your attention. So give them your attention. They're little kids running around in your body saying, look at me, see me, feel me, allow me to be. And every time you push them away and say, no, you will not speak. I will not look at you. I hate you. I don't want to feel you. You are disowning parts of yourself even deeper.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And I feel like it's, like tough stuff, but also like very, very powerful stuff. And I think that, when it comes to moving through deep emotions and deep pain, I think that, that stuff is so, so important to consider, especially if you do run a business and you want to keep your business going while you're doing this stuff. I think that we just think about like what we need to do in the moment to survive. But I think that, that's not like thriving and healing. Like we really have to give ourselves this time to heal, it sounds like, and to, not worry about like this like whole positivity thing that's going around social media and the world right now. It's like we just have to be true to how we're feeling, and that's okay.
Yeah, so true. I've had clients of mine actually take a social media fast for a couple of weeks just to regroup and give their brain some breathing time. Because if you're looking at social media and how everyone else's photoshopped lives is so perfect, you're going to feel bad about your own. You're going to feel like you're the only one that's in so much pain and suffering through life. You're going to step into that bubble of self-centeredness, which is the last thing we should do when we're grieving. We should find connections that are meaningful with people who are going through something similar, who can be a space for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree with that. I think that that's super, super important. I was thinking too, like one of the things that I think is challenging about this, especially running like an online business or having an online presence is, it does kind of feel like if you post anything that's not sort of like happy, at least this has been my experience, it's like people kind of wonder if you're okay. And then you get a whole lot of like, are you okay? And it's sort of interesting in society because I feel like people are very uncomfortable with the idea that people are not okay. And it's not like, it's not like a forever thing. Like we all go through these ups and downs. We all have these like deep valleys and these high peaks in life. And I think it's really interesting, like this idea of like, are you okay type thing.
For me, and this may not be for everyone else, but for me, I would much rather reach out to a friend who's local to me, go get a coffee or hop on a phone call and really share my heart with that person than post on social media that I'm not feeling okay or that somebody did something to me. I rarely do that. If you go on my Facebook feed, you won't see any negative messages, my messages of anger or sadness or grief or guilt or shame. Because I don't believe that I have to be on social media talking to people, putting the stuff out there to people who don't even know me. Why would I do that? I would much rather have a one-on-one conversation with someone I know, pick up the phone or text them and say, hey, are you available to talk at some time today? I really need to get something off my chest. Than to put it out on social media and invite a barrage of comments from people who don't even perhaps understand where you're coming from, who are rushing to fix you, who want you to be happy, or who are telling you something positive about, how you should be. You don't want to hear that stuff. So don't put yourself out there if that's not what you're looking for. That's my advice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think that that's a great piece of advice. And, all this has been so wonderful. And I'm curious, just kind of linking it back to business. What has it been like for you to kind of blend like a spiritual business with, I guess, like spirituality with business? Like, how has it been for you to, put a price on the retreats that you offer and put a price on like how you help people? Because I can imagine, since this is like very much your dharma, like the thing that you love to do. And I feel this with yoga as well. Like, it's very hard to like put a price tag on what we do, especially when we're helping others to heal.
Yeah, so when I started my business, remember I was a hospice volunteer. I was volunteering in nursing homes. I did a lot of work on a voluntary basis. And I had this idea in my mind that what I was doing was the work of the divine, and therefore I shouldn't charge for it. So I had to really work on my money stuff, because I had always charged enough and charged well for all the work I had done prior to that. And money came in. I was always supported by the universe for what I needed. But somehow doing the work of the divine took on a different flavor and quality. So I had to then finally get real and work with a coach and get rid of my money stuff, make peace with the fact that the universe doesn't want me to be in a state of poverty doing this work. The universe wants me to be abundant, because only from a space of abundance, when my needs are nourished and taken care of, when I have enough rest, when I have enough good food, nourishing foods, when I have enough fun, when I have enough money to take trips and do the things that I like to do, then I bring more of me to my clients. So today I have absolutely no judgment about what I charge. I have to pay bills just like anybody else. You wouldn't go to a doctor and bargain with a doctor and say, can we do part of the surgery and not the other part? Or can we do this 3 months from now? Or can you somehow give me a 50% discount? No one says that to a doctor, but somehow when they come to a healer, and I think of myself as a healer because I work with spiritually minded women and use spiritual tools to help them heal. When people come to a healer, somehow there's an expectation that you shouldn't charge for your work, or you shouldn't charge X amount of dollars for your work, which I don't buy at all. So the women who work with me, the women who are drawn to me, are women who get that money is not a bad thing. Money is not good or bad. It's our judgments around money that make it good or bad. So now I have absolutely no judgments, bad feelings around how much I charge, because I know the value I bring. And even as I say the words, I fully recognize and own that everything that comes through me comes from the divine. So I just show up and I'm here like the vessel, the vehicle through which divine inspiration and healing flow through to my clients. And I know that unless I own what I charge, unless I own my value and worth, I can't do the work. I'm going to be in a state of deprivation. I'm going to be in a state of scarcity. I'm going to be in a state of unworthiness, none of which I need to model for my clients, none of which is serving my clients. So if you are feeling that you can't charge for your work or what you bring to your people, then I would highly, highly recommend that you step away and do your internal work. You need to reconnect with your sense of worthiness and value, how you're helping your clients heal, the sacred container that you provide for them. You need to be clear about that before you can step fully into your role as a yoga teacher or a healer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. I'm definitely of the same mindset with that. And I think that it is really important to remember in those times where it feels hard to, set a price, that exactly like you said, you're not able to heal people if you're not, getting the exchange that you need. And in our culture today in 2019, it's money, it's monetary. Like, yeah. It's not helping anyone if you can't pay your rent or buy groceries. Like, that's not going to benefit anyone to heal from their grief.
Exactly. And money is a boundary. So when you have no boundaries around money, how much you charge, what your value is, you will take on clients who bring the same energy to you, who will look to you for discounts, who won't show up for calls on time, who will, who will forget to turn in work you assigned them or show up unprepared. You don't want that, but you have to recognize that the energy that's coming to you is the energy that you're putting out. So when you finally get that, you can take responsibility, you can correct what needs some internal shifting, and then be in that place of alignment from where you can serve fully and wholly.
Absolutely. I love that. And so, from running a successful business, what are some of the biggest business lessons that you've learned personally?
Probably the biggest business lesson, Amanda, is that my business is about me, and everything I do for me is reflected in my business. So the more time I give myself, the more rest I have in my life, the more self-care and compassion I can give myself, the more time I'm willing to take away when I need that time away. All of this reflects on my business. So we can't separate business from the rest of our lives, because these businesses that we are doing are our passion projects, like I said earlier. They're birthed from our soul. So every time we nourish and nurture and feed our souls, we are feeding our business. That's the way it works. So anytime you deny yourself, you deprive yourself, you blow off boundaries that you have with yourself and with other people, anytime you're not telling the truth about something, whether it is about money, your health, your energy, anytime you're out of alignment with integrity, all of that will show up in your business. So the best way to have a thriving business is to build a thriving you.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great point. It's like whatever you are, however you're kind of like internal or whatever's going on with you, I feel like that's going to be projected to your business. So I think that, doing that personal work is really important for having a successful business.
Right. And this whole idea of uncoupling, which I love. So anytime a client says no to you, you take it as personal rejection, right? Like, my prices were too much, or, nobody likes me, or maybe I don't know enough. I have to go get another certification. Somehow we make it about ourselves, because these are businesses of our souls. But we have to find that space to uncouple. Somebody else's money story isn't about our worthiness. So anytime you've coupled two things together that don't belong together, really consciously untangle those stories. Someone else said no to you because they don't have the money. They have money drama going on in their lives. You don't have to take on their story and make it about you and, how nobody is willing to work with you because you don't know enough, or maybe there's something wrong with you. We have to constantly learn to own and claim our self-worth. Everything springs from our worthiness. So anytime you have an unworthy story going on, attend to it before you attend to a client or write a blog post or show up for a webinar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really, really good stuff. I love that. Is there any other big business lessons that you've learned? I know you've done like workshops and retreats and working with people one-on-one. So lots of good stuff happening within your business.
So a big lesson also is when a client decides to drop out midway. I've had this happen for whatever reason, and they're throwing everything at you. You didn't do this. You didn't say this. You didn't tell me this. Understand that there's some drama going on in their lives, which they're not willing to face their pain. Okay. And they're making it about you, because in this line of work, especially the kind of work I do, I can often become a mirror for them. Right? They see their anger. They're not willing to face it. They're angry at me. They see their pain. They're not willing to see it. I become the reason they're in pain. Sometimes that happens, and we have to lovingly and gently extricate ourselves, and if necessary, send your client off with a blessing, but never get into a battle with them. Understand that they are feeling broken, they're in pain, but they are unwilling to take certain responsibilities that they should in order to do the work. And if you run into that midway through a coaching program, be willing to let that client go. Don't hang on to a client for fear of losing the money. Just be willing to let somebody go if they don't feel right, if they're not doing the work, if they're not showing up, if they're making it all about you, if they're constantly, throwing stuff at you and saying, you didn't do this, you didn't say this, we had an agreement, blah, blah, blah. There are these kinds of people. And you realize you're 3 sessions in or 6 sessions in, and then you're saying, well, I committed to this. I want to help her. We don't have to rescue anybody. That is not our job.
Right.
That's one of the biggest business lessons I've learned. I'm not here to rescue anybody. I always tell every client who signs up to work with me, you must be 110% invested in your healing. I'm 100% invested, but you've got to be 110% for this work to stick. You want people with that level of commitment. So don't be afraid to say no. If you've made a bad decision, if you've ignored a red flag and you've started working, you don't have to hang on to a client just because of the money story. Be willing to let them go and something much better will show up.
Yeah. And it comes back to that lesson of trust, right? Because I think so much, if you haven't really processed your relationship with money or I guess recognized your money stories, I think sometimes we come from the perspective of lack mindset, which makes us feel like we should push through things that are obviously not serving us. That might be even on the other side, I paid for this thing, I need to stay in it or continue doing it because I spent so much money on it, and vice versa. It might be oh, well, I really need the money from this person, so I'm going to try and convince them to stay, versus if one person out of that feels like it's not serving them, it's really important to, I think, just let it go and trust that that'll make space for somebody else to come into your life to work with.
Exactly. And the other thing that I've let go of is the word should. There are no shoulds in my business. I mean, they say you should do this or you must do this in order to get X result. I do work that lights me up, that brings me joy, that lets me serve my people in the highest possible way that I can, with all the love and integrity that I'm capable of. But I don't get into the story of I must do this or I should do this in order for me to have this result. So I focus on work that lights me up. I focus on sharing my wisdom, which is something I love to do. I love to speak and teach and coach and write. So that's my focus. What lights me up is what communicates and lands in the hearts of my ideal clients.
Right.
Instead of trying 100 different things that don't work. So that's a big business lesson too.
Yeah, that's a big one for sure. I love it. Yeah, I feel like, I just love your mentality on everything that you're doing and the business that you've created. And I think it's really powerful to be able to run a spiritual practice and be a healer who's, able to serve people, but also has a very good understanding of how to run a business that allows you to thrive as well. I think it's really incredible. So thank you for sharing all of that.
Oh, thank you so much for asking such good questions.
Yeah, no worries. And yeah, thank you. I'm curious if people want to learn more about you, if they want to potentially work with you, if they might be going through some grief themselves and feel like, you might be able to serve them in some way, where can they go to find that information?
So there are several resources that I can offer you. The first is my website, which is www.umagirish.com, first name, last name.com. I'm on Instagram and Facebook. On Facebook, I'm facebook.com/Uma Writes. And then I run a Facebook group for grieving women, which is called Transform Pain into Purpose. I also have a membership which is called Awakening Souls Community. And this is for women who want to go to the next level of growth. They know that pain is a portal to deeper consciousness and living aligned lives with their souls. And so in this membership, we have conversations. I do guest interviews. I teach a class every month. And this is about going deeper into their soul journey, their soul purpose, and living a life aligned with soul consciousness as opposed to personality consciousness.
Amazing. All of that sounds wonderful. And I'll make sure that there's links for that in the show notes. Uma, thank you so much for this conversation today. This has been really, really wonderful. And I'm so grateful that you took the time to talk with me.
It's my deep pleasure and honor, Amanda. Thank you so much for inviting me.
All right. I hope that you enjoyed that episode of the podcast with Uma Girish. I have got notes and links and all that good stuff on the show notes at mbomyoga.com. And I would definitely recommend going to check out her website. If you are personally dealing with something, it is a great resource. And just as a yoga teacher, if you feel like there could be value in how you can lead your classes and support your students with their own personal stuff that they've got going on, including grief and loss, definitely a really good resource there. She's got tons of books and courses and ways to work with her and all that good stuff. And of course, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Mastering the Business of Yoga. You can join the private Facebook community at Yoga Business Badasses. And as always, you can email me if you have any questions, comments, or feedback. It's info@mbomyoga.com. All right. Thank you so much for listening, and I will see you next week. Namaste.